Platform fighters have quickly become a popular genre in gaming over the past few years. While not the first platform fighter, Super Smash Bros. Was the one that really took the idea and went running with it. Over the years, we had games like Digimon Rumble Arena or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Smash Up, but the past few years especially has seen an explosion in the amount of releases. From Brawlhalla, Rise of Aether, Brawlout, Fraymakers, and Multiverses, we have seen countless takes on the genre. But there is another that is the subject of the video today, which of course is Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl is a series that, much like how it sounds, focuses on taking various Nickelodeon characters and putting them against one another in a fighting game. Your favorites such as SpongeBob, Danny Phantom, Jimmy Neutron, and more are featured and surprisingly has a lot of love put into each one. Today we will be discussing the history of both the first and second game, and how they can take the concept and improve on it for hypothetical future installments, along with what characters I would like to see added personally. As always, if you liked the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and with that said, let's get started. Before we get into Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl though, to better understand how the series came to be, we need to go back in time a bit to a game called Smash Fest. Smash Fest released in 2009 and was actually Nickelodeon's first attempt at a platform fighter. It only had 5 playable characters, which were SpongeBob, Timmy, Otis, Private, and Patrick was unlockable. It also only had one stage and was extremely basic. The main menu, however, featured a reference to their next attempt at a crossover fighter, and that would be Super Brawl. Super Brawl started in 2009 as a game developed by MP Game Studio called Jingle Brawl, and was a 2D fighter much like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, featuring characters such as SpongeBob, Timmy, Otis, and even King Julian. Jingle Brawl was available right on your browser and was so popular it ended up getting renamed Super Brawl and would see many sequels throughout the years. Super Brawl 2 expanded on the original idea only a year later and added several new modes along with new characters such as Jimmy Neutron, Skipper, Kitty Catchwell, and Sandy Cheeks. Super Brawl 3 would be seen years later in 2013 and quickly became one of the most played games on Nick.com. Super Brawl 3 was the first game developed by Workin' Man Interactive, who had taken over the series. With a new studio, of course, the gameplay ended up feeling very different from its predecessors. This entry also had a very different roster with characters like Jimmy Neutron and the Penguins of Madagascar being cut, but bringing in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other DreamWorks characters like Poe and Bob. Super Brawl 3 also got a new version for April Fool's Day called Just Got Real, where the characters are now hyper-realistic versions of themselves, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles being actual turtles. Of course, with the success of the third game, that meant even more sequels on the way. Super Brawl 4 was vastly different from the third game and released in 2015. It had a far more cartoonish and stylized art style while also having a theme focused completely on superheroes and comic books. This meant characters such as SpongeBob wearing their Mermaid Man or Invisible outfits, but also meant for the first time we would see live action characters brought into the fight with Henry Hart, also known as Kid Danger, and some of the Power Rangers. Of course, this series still has 2 entries left before we get caught up to the topic of the video today. The next game in the series being Super Brawl World released in 2017 and introduced new characters from the Loud House, Invader Zim, and even Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks. This marked a turning point for the series as it was the final game to be released on web browsers. Now, the current final game in the Super Brawl series is Super Brawl Universe and was released only a year after Super Brawl World for Android devices and later on iOS devices. This game was actually pretty massive and ended up with nearly 40 characters. This game was a little different with its setup by introducing classes that would determine who had the advantage in battle. Now with all of that talked about, that seems to be the end of the Super Brawl series for now, and now we enter 2020 where Nickelodeon started looking for developers that could handle their plans to evolve the Super Brawl idea into a platform fighter. They had over a decade of experience in fighting games now and wanted to take it to the next level. Ludosity was a small Swedish company who had worked on games such as It'll Do, Card City Nights, and Princess Remedy. Of course, what made Nickelodeon set their eyes on such a small studio who had only made indie games? Well, in 2018, they launched a game called Slap City, which just happened to be exactly the experience Nickelodeon was looking for. You see, Slap City happened to be a platform fighter taking several of Ludosity's characters and putting them against one another. The game got extremely positive buzz surrounding it, and people praised its mechanics and gameplay, considering it one of the best platform fighters you could even buy. A little side note, but Slap City also featured a sports mode called Slap Ball, which will be important shortly. Now the partnership seemed perfect, and with that we finally reached the first game of the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl series. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl released in 2021, less than 2 years after starting production, and would be the first time the Nickelodeon crossover fighter would appear on console. The game launched with 20 characters, and you could play as characters such as Aang, CatDog, Danny Phantom, Leonardo, SpongeBob, Zim, and even more. The game also launched with some basic game modes such as Arcade, and featured a few sports modes, which of course was based off the Slap Ball game mode mentioned earlier from Slap City. This sports mode included soccer, football, Tommy Ball, Yawn Ball, and Plankton Ball, and would have different sizes or shapes of the balls as well as different mechanics such as the soccer ball not being able to be grabbed. It was nothing super crazy, but did add some optional fun for parties that allowed you to switch things up if you wanted something other than the normal gameplay. Of course, the normal gameplay had stock and time modes, and Arcade had text conversations between characters that was able to show off a bit of their personality. The stages were also fun and creative and seemed to have actual thought put into them. However, this first attempt in the series was met with a lot of criticism too. Some people felt the game wasn't as polished as others out there at the time, and due to the short development time, another criticism was the lack of content. There were no items in the game, there was no voice acting in the game, there was no crossplay, and there was no variety in costume changes in the game. Ludosity quickly worked on these issues to try and create the best game they could after launch though. Only a month after launch, they announced that alternate costumes would be added to the game with a free update. Within the next few months, they announced that both Shredder and Garfield would be released as free DLC, and that cross-platform play would be coming to the game in 2022. The game would also end up with more DLC characters such as Jenny, Hugh Neutron, and Rocco, who were released throughout 2022, along with voice acting and items being introduced in the same year. Unfortunately, adding crossplay like they planned was eventually cancelled due to rights handling issues. I personally remember buying the game and inviting people over the first night it came out and just having a blast. A few matches turned into seeing who could beat my April O'Neil at 2 o'clock in the morning while we all sat around laughing. It wasn't the best fighting game ever, but it had so much charm and everyone seemed to have fun playing it. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl had such a short development time, and you could tell the developers really did care for the franchise and game and wanted to do the best they could. They worked on getting the highly requested content into the game as fast as possible with a small team and made the game feel better with each update. The game had potential and you could feel it oozing out when you played, and any other problems could be fixed with a potential sequel, which of course is exactly what they attempted to do. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 had been rumored about half a year before it was announced due to images of Squidward anonymously leaking online. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the end of the leak surrounding the game. Amazon accidentally leaked the entire roster only a week after the game was announced from the box art, and it quickly spread across the internet. The full splash art seemed to also get fans' hearts racing, as many of their favorites didn't appear to be returning to the game. This would mean characters like Lucy Loud stayed for the sequel, but Lincoln Loud didn't, or characters like Raphael and Donatello made it, but meaning Leonardo and Michelangelo were cut out. It was a confusing time for fans who were hoping for the sequel to be basically just an upgraded version of the first game with everyone returning. This unfortunately proved to be true when a couple weeks before launch the entire game leaked online and quickly spread around. People learned that there were no secret characters and that Vlad, who was featured on the cover, was just a story mode boss fight. However, people seemed to actually really enjoy the game. The story mode was met with high praise and the interactions between characters and various boss fights were fun. Plus, the campaign had a roguelike element to it where you collect power-ups as you go and get to pick your path along a map to choose your battles. You could earn playable characters through playing this mode, and even purchase decorations and more for your main hub. The campaign was very easily one of the highlights of the sequel, and I personally found the game worth the purchase just for how much fun I had playing it. There were also new mechanics added, such as a slime meter that you could build up to use powerful new abilities or enhance other abilities. Other modes from the previous game returned, such as Arcade, Timed, and Stocks, along with brand new modes like Boss Rush and Pop the Slime Balloons. Just like they wanted for the first game, they were also finally able to add crossplay for the sequel. The game felt all around smoother and managed to add a variety of new ways to play, along with a completely unique mode for the story. The cut content seemed to be forgotten as people started to dive in. I remember being personally excited for the sequel. I was let down that several of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were cut, but was extremely excited about the story mode, and boy, I don't think it disappointed me even a little bit. In fact, I wanted more when I had finished it several times. The game was a major step up from the first game in my eyes, and that leads us to the final part of this video. What is next for the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl? Will we get a third game? What would that look like? I have a couple ideas for what I would like to see taken from the second game and made even better. Starting off with a potential Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 3, I'd like to see them get a little bit more development time. The first 2 games seem to have quick turnarounds for a small team, and it is amazing what they managed to do with that time. So imagine an extra 6 to 12 months to work with, at least on top of that. Now, of course, with the extra development time, let's discuss the roster. Right away, I think every character from Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, including DLC, should return, along with every character from the first game and its DLC should return. This brings back the full ninja team, along with other popular characters like CatDog and Toph. This also makes the roster feel less strange by adding Lincoln Loud back along with keeping Lucy Loud. That would bring 11 characters back, bringing us to a total of 40, which is already feeling a lot more full. But what about newcomers? There's been some highly requested characters, and some should be brought in if possible. I'll start by bringing up some characters from franchises not currently represented, and then go into some already represented franchises. The first newcomer I would add is pretty obvious, and I think we all know, but Timmy Turner. I know he supposedly has rights issues, and that's why he hasn't appeared in the series yet, but getting him back together with Jimmy for the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour duo would be an amazing surprise and immediately hype up the new game. Timmy was also actually in all 6 Super Brawl games, so doing what it takes to get him back for a new game feels like something they should do whatever it takes to figure out. The second newcomer is actually another character that appeared in the first 2 Super Brawl games and would be Otis from Barnyard. The Barnyard memes are still pretty popular, and the game is a little lacking with the late 2000s representation. Ludosity themselves seem to like the meme pics a little, as we got Powdered Toast Man, Hugh Neutron, and Grandma Gertie, so adding Otis in as another pick along those lines just fits so well. The third new series I'd like to see introduced would be Chalk Zone by adding Snap. Of course, Snap doesn't really do much himself, so maybe having Rudy in to use Snap in his attacks would be better, or maybe they would work even better as a duo fighter. Of course, I would trust the developers to figure out a great and fitting moveset, as everyone else in the game feels pretty good to play. The next new series that I have seen a lot of requests for would be the Mighty Bee. Bessie could have a moveset where she used a lot of things from the show, and obviously have bees be a major part of her moveset. Her Slime Meter Ultimate, if they keep that for a new game, could be her turning into the Mighty Bee herself. We will include one last newcomer series, bringing up to a total of 5 new series, and this one is actually pretty recent. Glitch Tex is the final new series I'd add right away, and of course the playable character would be Miko. The concept of the show is dealing with glitches from video games that appear in the real world, and could honestly be applied to be one of the main points of the next story mode. Miko has her hammer so she can use, along with a variety of other tech items that can make her have a very unique moveset. With 5 new series added and a newcomer from each, that would put us at 45 possible characters. So now let us look at new characters from series already represented in the game. We will try and figure out 5 to add to bring the final roster up to 50, but before that we need to look at how many characters we have from each series already to try and even it out a little bit. We have 6 characters from Avatar, 7 from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and 6 from SpongeBob. I feel like this is a pretty good spot for each of the series. Of course, we could always add more as they are maybe the most popular shows in the game, but Nickelodeon also has a lot of other series that don't have a second rep or very little despite deserving more. The first new rep I would like to see from an existing series in the game would be Dib from Invader Zim. Invader Zim is a cult classic, and honestly not having Dib as a foil to Zim in the game or being able to have the two interact feels a bit lacking at the moment. Enter the Florpus showed that Dib has a bunch of abilities we didn't even expect that would make him an excellent fighter to join. The second new rep I would add would be Vexus from My Life as a Teenage Robot. Ginny was already in both games, so introducing a second rep from another cult classic series makes a lot of sense. Vexus would also be unique with her shapeshifting ability and teleportation. Now the third new rep we are going with is one that, with this hypothetical new game, was a new series we just added, but I would choose the Crimson Chin from Fairly Odd Parents to join along with Timmy. Fairly Odd Parents is an iconic series, and even has a new show that just aired. Adding a second rep seems ideal if they can work through the rights issues, plus I would like to see the Crimson Chin interact with Powdered Toast Man. The next rep I would bring into the game would be Donnie Thornberry. Donnie is a feral boy who shows signs of sophistication at times, but could be fun just for his more wild moveset. The rest of the cast trying to understand him as he babbles or makes animal sounds would be fun, and we have had Nigel in both games now, so adding a second Thornberry rep feels a bit overdue. The final new rep that I would choose to bring our cast up to 50 total playable characters would be Vlad from Danny Phantom. He was a boss in the second game, but not playable at all. They would already have a model and at least a general moveset from adding him to the last game, so bringing him to a new entry feels right, and I remember a lot of people really wishing he was playable or would be added as free DLC. With that, we have a roster of 50 characters, which would be massive and featuring so many fan favorites from across Nickelodeon. Now for the rest of the game, I would like to see all the stages come back. This would mean some like the Ghost Zone and Glove World would return, but that doesn't mean they have to remain the same. Take the concepts of the old stages and rework them if needed, as well as adding new stages from the new series introduced. Some of the new stages I would personally like to see would be Fairy World with the introduction of Fairly Odd Parents, the Barn from Barnyard, and Cluster Prime from My Life as a Teenage Robot. Along with the stages, I would mostly keep the story the same but expand on it. The roguelike mode worked great and felt unique, so just add more things to customize in this timeless star dial or whatever they choose to call it this time around, and more minigames and options as you pass through the various nodes. For minigames, I would hope to see the sports mode and past minigames return along with brand new ones that just add replayability. I think Ludosity has been on the right track so far with the series gameplay and can't imagine much that I would change from it. It has been easy to pick up and hard to master, which is great for both casual and competitive audiences. Overall though, I'm not quite sure how Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 performed, but it was a massive step up from the first game almost all the way around, and giving Ludosity the chance to improve upon it for a third entry would almost certainly be a smash hit. There are still a lot of Nickelodeon series and characters to work with to expand the games even further. It doesn't feel like Nickelodeon will give up on the series after such a long history with crossover fighters from Super Brawl to now several years of Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. But what do you hope to see in a potential Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 3? What characters, maps, game modes, or whatever else would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching.